The hidden veiled hole of the alien palace was silent to silent. Thousands of eyes watched from the shadows, waiting, whispering, afraid. At the center of the chamber stood the throne of the veiled princess, a seat covered in silver and crystal, glowing faintly under blue light. Upon it sat the one no alien dared to look at, the mysterious princess whose face was always hidden behind a jeweled veil. They called her Serenia, the untouchable daughter of the royal line, the one who carried the ancient curse. Her people believed that if any being looked upon her true face, they would be bound forever or die within a heartbeat. For years, nobles and warriors came to her court, but none ever dared to lift her veil. None dared to bond. The veil was not just cloth. It was law, it was tradition, it was fear made into silk and silver. Her eyes, glowing faintly violet beneath the lattice of jewels, had seen generations of suitors kneel before her, only to leave broken and terrified, and so she remained veiled, untouched, her power locked behind silence. But this day was different. This day a human had come. Captain Marcus Hale stood in the center of the hall, his boots heavy against the shining floor, his armor still scarred from battles fought across the stars. He was not like the others. He did not tremble when he stepped forward. He did not bow with fear. The council whispered among themselves, calling him reckless, calling him foolish, calling him doomed. No human had ever stood in this place before, and none believed he would. Leave it alive. Marcus raised his head, his gaze steady, meeting the princess even through the shimmer of her veil. The air around them was heavy, thick with ancient warnings, yet he felt only curiosity, only the steady beat of his own heart. He had fought beasts with claws of fire. He had crossed battlefields drenched in blood, and he had lost many friends to fierce shadows. Now, standing before her, he did not see a curse. He saw someone trapped behind a wall built by others, and for reasons he could not explain, he did not want to look away. The high priest of the court stepped forward, his voice loud. No one dares to bond without seeing the face of the princess. Do you, human, wish to throw away your life? The crowd hissed and muttered, waiting for him to tremble, waiting for him to fall. But Marcus simply answered, his voice calm. I do not need to see her face to know who she is. The words fell heavy across the chamber, silencing the whispers, turning eyes wide. Even Serenia tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing with curiosity. Her voice, soft yet sharp like a blade, broke the silence. Why do you not fear me? She asked, when even my own people will not dare to look. Marcus's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something steady. Because fear is for those who do not trust. And I have fought beside strangers who became brothers without ever seeing their souls. Why should a veil frighten me? Gasps spread through the hall, the nobles' jeweled masks glinting as they shifted uneasily. Serenia leaned forward, the chains of her veil tinkling softly, her violet eyes locking on him. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not without trembling, not without doubt. Her heart, usually shielded behind walls of ritual and silence, gave a small, almost forgotten ache. For the first time in her life, she wondered if perhaps there was more beyond the veil than fear. Still, she tested him, her words like ice. You are bold, human, but boldness is not the same as wisdom. Do you know what it means if you dare to see what others will not? Marcus answered without hesitation. It means I will face truth, even if it kills me. The silence returned, thick and heavy. Even the torches seemed to burn lower, waiting for what would come next. Serenia's hand lifted slowly, her long fingers wrapped in silver rings, reaching for the edge of her veil. The council shouted in protest, their voices trembling. No, princess, the law forbids it, the curse forbids it. But Serenia did not stop, her eyes never leaving the human who stood tall and unflinching. The veil shimmered in the dim light as her fingers touched it. For a moment, time seemed frozen, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Marcus's heart pounded, but he did not step back. He did not flinch. Round him the crowd recoiled, some covering their faces, some whispering prayers. Only Marcus stood firm, his eyes steady, waiting for whatever truth would come. Serena's lips parted beneath the veil, her voice soft, almost trembling. You are either the bravest fool I have ever met, or the one the prophecy spoke of. Marcus tilted his head slightly, his voice low, maybe both. Her hands lowered again, the veil still in place, her test unfinished. But her eyes linger on him, longer than they had on anyone else, and in that moment, in the silence of the hall, something unspoken passed between them. The crowd began to murmur again, louder this time, filled with both anger and fear. The high priest raised his staff, declaring the human's presence a danger. Demanding his removal, guards stepped forward, their weapons raised, their armor clashing. But Serenia lifted her hand, her voice commanding, "No, he stays. The human has dared where none have, and I will judge him myself." Her words silenced the hall once more, the council bowing reluctantly. Marcus stood tall, his heart still steady, his mind still unafraid. He had walked into the palace of fear, and instead of shadows, he had found eyes filled with mystery. The legend of the Veiled Princess was no longer just a story to him. It was real, it was alive. And though he did not yet know what destiny waited, he knew one thing with certainty. This was only the beginning. The human who dared next morning the palace was alive with whispers. Every corridor, every hall, every shadow carried the same words. The human did not bow. The human did not fear. The human dared to stand before the Veiled Princess. Servants rushed with wide eyes. Nobles argued behind closed doors. And the council spoke of omens, curses, and prophecies. But in the heart of the palace, Marcus Hale stood calmly, his hands behind his back, watching the alien sun rise through tall crystal windows. He had been tested in war. He had seen comrades fall and enemies rise. But none of it compared to the weight of alien eyes watching him now. When the heavy doors of the throne hall opened again, the air grew colder. Serenia appeared, her veil still hiding her face, her gown flowing like smoke as she stepped forward. The crowd bowed in silence, except Marcus, who stood straight and unbent, his eyes steady as always. The council leader, a tall alien with silver skin, hissed angrily, "Human, your presence is an insult. No one dares to defy the veil. No one dares to bond without seeing what is forbidden." But Serenia raised her hand, silencing him. Her eyes locked on Marcus. She spoke, her voice soft but carrying power that echoed through the chamber. "Tell me, human, why do you stand here without fear? Why do you look at me as if the curse does not touch you?" Marcus took a slow breath, his voice calm. "Because fear builds walls, and I have spent my whole life breaking walls. I do not see curses, I see choices." The crowd gasped, their jeweled masks turning toward one another. In shock, Serena's violet eyes glowed faintly behind her veil, studying him with an intensity no one else had ever seen. "You are reckless," she said, her voice sharper now. Reckless men burn quickly, like sparks in the wind. Marcus tilted his head, his lips curving into a faint smile. "Maybe, but sometimes sparks light fires that last forever." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the crystal walls. The council leader hissed again, his voice full of venom. "He is mocking your sacred law, princess. Remove him before he brings ruin." But Serena's hand lifted once more, her tone final. "No, he stays. I will see where his courage leads." Marcus was led deeper into the palace, through halls lined with carvings of old battles and alien gods. Guards followed him, their weapons always close, their eyes sharp with suspicion. But he walked with steady steps, unbothered, as if he belonged here. At last, they reached the princess's private garden, hidden behind tall crystal walls that shimmered with alien light. It was quiet here, filled with silver trees, glowing flowers, and a fountain that whispered like soft rain. Serenia stood among the flowers, her veil shimmering as she turned toward him. "No one has spoken to me like you do," she said softly. "Not with defiance, not with calm, not with truth, Marcus." nodded, his voice steady. Maybe that's because I'm not here to win your throne or your power. I'm here because I see a person behind all the fear. Her fingers touched her veil lightly. The faintest tremor in her movements. You do not know what you risk, human, she whispered. If you see me, if you bond, you will never walk free again. Your life will not be your own. Marcus stepped closer, not threatening, but steady. Life has never been mine to keep, he said quietly. I've given it to every soldier beside me, to every friend I've lost. What is one more choice if it means trust? Her breath caught, though hidden by the veil. Her glowing eyes softened. For the first time in years, she felt her heart stir, not with fear, but with something different, something dangerous, the kind of feeling her people called forbidden. But even here, danger lingered. As shadow moved at the edge of the garden, a figure cloaked in black watching them closely. Serena's eyes flicked toward it, her voice low. You are watched, human. There are those who want you gone before the sun falls again. Marcus did not turn, did not flinch. He only answered, let them come. I've been hunted before. I'm still here. She studied him, her silence longer this time, as if she were searching his soul through his steady gaze. Finally, Serenu spoke again, her tones softer. You do not know what I carry, Marcus Hale. You do not know the truth behind this veil. But if you still choose to stay, then perhaps you are either the bravest soul in this palace, or the most foolish, Marcus answered without hesitation. Maybe both. But I will not leave. The night wind stirred the silver leaves, carrying her silence into the stars. She turned away, her veil glinting under the alien moonlight, and, for the first time in her life, she whispered, then let us see where courage takes you. And as she walked into the shadows, Marcus knew the path he had chosen would change everything. Secrets beneath the veiled palace at night was a place of whispers. Silver lamps glowed softly in the corridors, casting long shadows across walls carved with ancient symbols. Marcus walked with calm steps, though he could feel the weight of 100 eyes watching him. Guards trailed behind at a distance, their faces hidden by helmets, their hands always close to their weapons. But he kept moving, unbothered, as if he had walked these halls all his life. The princess's garden had become his only refuge. Here, among the glowing flowers and silver trees, Serenia allowed him to stand close, to speak, to breathe in the same air without punishment. She always kept her veil on, but her voice, her eyes, her presence were no longer cold. It was as if she had allowed a door to open, a door no one else had dared to touch. Marcus did not push, he did not demand, he only listened. And so one night, when the alien moon hung low, Serenia began to speak. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of centuries. My people hide my face because of prophecy, she said, her hand brushing the veil gently. It is said that if one dares to bond with me, their soul will fuse with mine, and together we will awaken power strong enough to shake empires. Marcus's brow furrowed, his voice calm. Power, like that, makes enemies. Her violet eyes glowed faintly beneath the veil. It already has. She turned away, walking along the silver fountain, her reflection broken by ripples of light. My brother was meant to guard me, but he was betrayed, slain by those who fear what I carry, she whispered. The council says they protect me, but I am their prisoner. They keep me veiled, locked, hidden. So the prophecy will never be fulfilled. Marcus stepped closer, his tone steady. And you believe it, this prophecy? Serena's hands clenched, her voice trembling for the first time. I do not want to, but the curse has followed me since birth. Those who saw my face are gone, their lives ended, or their minds broken. How can I not believe? Marcus's jaw tightened, but his gaze never wavered. You think I am afraid of death? He said quietly. I have lived with it every day. I have buried more friends than I can count. If your face kills me, then at least I will have seen the truth once. Her breath caught, a faint sound behind the veil. For years she had only known fear, walls, and silence. Yet this human spoke as if her curse meant nothing. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps her fate was not a prison, but a key. But shadows lingered even here. A silver dagger flew from the darkness, striking into the trunk of a glowing tree with a sharp crack. Marcus moved instantly, pulling Srenir behind him, his body shielding her, his hand on his weapon. Figures in black cloaks stepped from the garden shadows, their eyes glowing red, their blades curved with venom. The assassins had come again, faster and bolder this time. Serenia's voice shook with fury. They dared to strike me here, in my own refuge. Marcus kept his stance firm, his tongue calm. Stay behind me. The first assassin lunged, blade flashing, but Marcus met him head-on, twisting his arm and slamming the alien into the ground. The second came from the side, but Marcus's rifle barked once, the shadow falling into the silver grass. Srenir raised her hands, her voice like thunder, words in her ancient tongue rolling through the garden. The assassins froze, their bodies trembling as if the air itself held them. Her power, even veiled, was terrifying, her presence making the shadows shake. But Marcus could see the strain in her eyes, the way her hands trembled. He stepped forward, his blade cutting through the last attacker, his breath steady even in chaos. When the garden fell silent, only the fountain whispered again. Serenia's shoulders trembled, her voice breaking. They will never stop, not until I am dead, or bound, or broken. Marcus looked at her, his voice firm, unsteady. Then let them come. If they want you, they will have to go through me. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter through the veil. You do not even know me, yet you stand between me and death. Why? She asked. Marcus answered without hesitation. Because Kale once stood between me and death, and I learned from him that trust is built in moments like this. Her voice softened, almost like a whisper. Kale? Marcus nodded, his eyes lowering for a brief second. My partner, my brother in battle. He gave his life so I could stand here now. Srenir fell silent, her veil shifting as the night wind stirred it. For the first time, she saw in this human not just courage, but loss, pain, and something that mirrored her own. The silence between them was no longer empty, it was heavy with truth. At last, she spoke again, her tone softer than ever. Perhaps you are the one the prophecy spoke of, or perhaps you are only a soldier too stubborn to bow. But either way, Marcus Hale, you are no longer a stranger to me. Her words lingered in the air, wrapping around him like the veil itself. Marcus did not answer. He only stood firm, his eyes steady, his heart unshaken. Above them, the alien moon burned bright, casting light over silver trees and fallen assassins. And in that quiet garden, beneath shadows and prophecy, the bond between human and alien began to grow. The assassins' trial palace woke with anger. The news of the midnight attack spread like fire through the silver halls. Servants whispered in fear. Guards sharpened their weapons, and the council gathered with storm in their voices. They demanded answers, they demanded punishment, and they demanded the human be cast out before more blood was spilled. But Srenir stood silent, her veil glittering in the pale light of morning, her eyes cold fire behind the jeweled mask. Marcus was brought into the council chamber, chains on his wrists, though he had done nothing but defend. The nobles hissed at him, their jeweled masks hiding faces twisted with suspicion. One of them shouted, "Wherever the human goes, chaos follows. He brings death to our halls. Remove him before the curse consumes us all." Marcus said nothing, his eyes steady, his silence heavier than their shouting. He had faced worse than words on a battlefield. He would not bow to them here. The high priest raised his staff, his voice booming. The prophecy warns of danger. And this human walks into our temple as if he were chosen, but he is no chosen. He is an invader. We must strike before the bond is made. The council roared their agreement, their voices like a storm. But then Srenir rose, her hand lifting slowly, and the storm fell silent. Her words were soft, yet filled with power. Last night, the assassins came not for the human, but for me. and it was he who bled to protect me, while my own guards failed. The chamber grew restless, the nobles shifting, their jeweled masks tilting uneasily. Marcus looked at her, his voice low. I need no thanks, princess. I only did what anyone with honor would do. She turned to him, her glowing eyes sharp. Do not mistake me, Marcus Hale. I do not offer thanks, I offer truth. You are no invader here. You are proof that courage still exists. The council erupted again, furious, afraid. Their voices clashing like swords. One noble hissed, he only seeks to bind you, to claim the power of the prophecy for himself. Another growled, no human can be trusted. They are creatures of war and greed. Marcus finally spoke, his voice cutting through the chaos. You speak of fear as if it keeps you safe, but fear only builds cages. I did not come here for thrones, or crowns, or power. I came because I see someone hidden behind chains, and I do not turn away from chains. The hall grew silent again. Even the torches seemed to dim. Serenia studied him, her veil catching the faint blue glow of the chamber. In her heart, she felt something she could not name, but it burned warmer than fear. The council decided the matter with ancient law. They declared that Marcus must face the trial of blades, a right of survival older than the throne itself. If he lived, he would earn the right to stand beside the princess. If he died, his blood would prove that humans were never meant to walk these halls. Serenia wanted to protest, her voice trembling with anger, but the law was written in stone, unbending and broken. Marcus only nodded, his voice calm. Then let the trial come. The arena was carved deep beneath the palace, a circle of stone surrounded by chanting voices. The nobles filled the seats, their jeweled masks glowing in the firelight. Serenia watched from above, her hands clenched tight, her heart heavy with dread. Marcus stood in the center, unchained now, a simple blade in his hand, no armor, no rifle, only his human will. The gates opened, and from the shadows came his challengers. The first warrior charged, a towering alien with a double-bladed spear. Marcus moved swiftly, dudding the strike, his blade cutting shallow but precise. The crowd hissed, some cheering, some cursing, as blood spilled across the stone. The second challenger came, smaller but faster, twin daggers flashing like silver lightning. Marcus caught one strike on his blade, spun, and knocked the assassin into the dust. The trial dragged on, each opponent stronger than the last. Marcus's breath grew heavy, sweat running down his face, blood staining his arm where a blade had grazed him. But his eyes never wavered, his stance never faltered. Above, Serenia's heart pounded, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of her seat. She whispered behind her veil, do not fall, human, do not fall. At last, the final challenger appeared, a massive beast in armor, its claws burning with molten fire. The crowd roared, their voices shaking the arena. Marcus tightened his grip on the blade, his body bruised and battered, but his spirit unbroken. The beast lunged, claws tearing at stone, but Marcus rolled aside, slashing at the weak joint of its armor. The creature howled, swinging wildly, its rage filling the air. Marcus leapt onto its back, driving the blade deep into the glowing gap. The beast roared one final time before collapsing, the arena trembling as it fell. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the heavy sound of Marcus's breath. He stood tall, bloodied but alive, lifting his blade high for all to see. And above, Serenia rose to her feet, her voice ringing out, he has passed. He has earned his place. The council sat in stunned silence, their fear trembling behind jeweled masks. The prophecy they had tried to bury was no longer just words on stone. It was flesh, blood, and a human who dared to stand where no one else would. Serenia's eyes glowed brighter than ever as she whispered to herself, perhaps he truly is the one. And Marcus, though wounded and weary, looked up at her veil and thought, this is only the beginning. The veil crack's trial of blades had ended, but the palace did not return to peace. The nobles whispered in anger, their jeweled masks hiding trembling voices. their eyes sharp with fear. The people spoke in markets and carters. The human survived. The prophecy breathes. The veil will fall. Every word carried weight. Every whisper became an echo, until even the walls seemed to shiver with the rumor. And at the center of it all stood Marcus Hale, wounded but unbroken. Serenior summoned him to her private chambers, a place few had ever entered. The room glowed with soft silver light, its walls carved with stories of her ancestors. She stood by the window, the stars shining through the crystal panes, her veil glittering as it caught the light. For a long moment, she said nothing, her silence heavy, her hands folded before her. Then, in a voice softer than the wind, she spoke. "You should not have survived, and yet you stand here." Marcus leaned against the stone pillar, his bandaged arm resting at his side. "I've survived worse than blades," he said calmly. "I told you. Princess, fear does not decide my steps." Her eyes glowed beneath the veil, sharp, but filled with questions. "You do not understand what your survival means," she whispered. "The council fears you more than ever, and I fear something else." Marcus tilted his head, his tone steady. "And what do you fear?" Her hands lifted, fingers brushing the edge of the veil, trembling. "I fear myself," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I fear the prophecy. I fear what happens if the veil falls. Because once it does, nothing will ever be the same." Marcus stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Then maybe it's time things changed," he said quietly. Her breath caught behind the veil, a sound like the smallest gasp. For years, no one had dared to speak such words to her. Every noble bowed in fear. Every priest spoke only of curses. Every warrior turned away from her face. But this human, broken and scarred, stood here as if her veil was nothing more than cloth. Her heart trembled in a way it never had before, and that frightened her more than prophecy. "Why do you trust me?" she asked. "When my face could mean your end?" Marcus's eyes softened, his voice low. "Because trust is never about what you see, it's about what you choose to believe, and I choose to believe in you." Her veil shimmered as her head lowered, her hands clutching the silk tighter. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not with truth, not with fire, not with hope. The silence stretched, heavy and alive, and then a crack appeared, not in the veil, but in her wools. She reached up again, slowly, her fingers brushing the veil's edge. Her heart pounded, her breath unsteady, the weight of centuries pressing down on her. Marcus did not move, did not speak. He only waited, steady as stone. At last, Serenia lifted the veil only slightly, just enough for her lips to show. The faintest curve of her mouth trembled as she whispered, "This is all I dare." Marcus's chest tightened, not because of fear, but because of awe. The glimpse was small, but it carried more weight than all the battles he had fought. She lowered the veil quickly, her hands shaking, her voice rough. "You do not understand what you've seen, human. That moment alone could seal your fate." He smiled faintly, though his body was tired. "If that's fate, I'll take it." Her violet eyes widened behind the veil, glowing brighter. But before either could say more, the doors of the chamber burst open. Guards rushed in, their armor clashing, their voices sharp. "Princess, the council demands your presence at once," they shouted. "There are whispers of betrayal. The people question your rule, and they blame the human." Serenia's hands clenched, her voice cold. "Of course they do." She turned to Marcus, her tone sharper now. "They will try to break us apart. They will not stop until the veil is torn in blood or in fire." Marcus nodded, his voice calm. "Then let them try." The guards looked uneasy at his boldness, but none dared to answer. Serenior stepped closer, her veil brushing the air between them. "You have walked further into my world than any being alive," she whispered. "Do not fall now, Marcus Hale, for if you do, I fall with you." He met her eyes, his voice steady. "I don't fall. Princess, I stand." The guards led them, both to the council chamber once again. The hall was filled with nobles, their jeweled masks flashing under the torches, their voices a storm of anger. The high priest raised his staff, his voice booming. The veil cracks, the prophecy rises. The human must be cast into the abyss before it is too late. The crowd cheered and hissed, their fear filling the air like smoke. But Serenia raised her hand, her voice steady and sharp. No, the human stays. And if the veil is to crack, it will crack by my choice, not yours. Gasps filled the chamber, nobles stepping back, their fear plain even behind their masks. The prophecy was no longer hidden, no longer buried in silence. The veil had cracked, if only slightly, and the path ahead could not be turned back. Marcus stood tall, the weight of eyes upon him, knowing he had stepped deeper into destiny than he ever imagined. And Serenia, her hands trembling beneath her veil, whispered to herself, the beginning of the end has come, the unveiling. Council chamber was filled with fire and fear. Torches blazed along the tall crystal walls, shadows dancing like restless spirits. Nobles in jeweled masks shouted over one another, their voices a storm, their fear louder than reason. At the center of it all stood Serenia, the veiled princess, her jeweled veil trembling as if it carried the weight of the galaxy. Beside her stood Marcus Hale, scarred, weary, but unbroken, his presence like a blade cutting through the chaos. The high priest struck the floor with his staff, the sound echoing like thunder. The veil cracks, he shouted, his voice sharp, and the prophecy rises. We will not allow the end of our order. The human must be cast into the abyss, or the throne will fall. The nobles roared their agreement, their jeweled masks flashing with firelight. The crowd demanded blood, demanded silence, demanded control. But Serenia lifted her hand, her voice calm but heavy. No, you fear not me, but what I carry. You fear the bond that was written before your thrones were built. Her words silenced the storm for a moment, but the council leader hissed, if you will not choose, then we will force it. Unveil yourself now, and let us see if this human dares to face the curse. Gasps filled the chamber. The law had been spoken. There was no turning back. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady. Do not do this, princess. They twist the law to break you. But Serenia's violet eyes burned behind her veil, her voice firm. No, Marcus, they will not break me. They will see truth, even if it destroys me. Her hands rose, fingers trembling as they touched the jeweled fabric. The hall held its breath. The torches dimmed. The whispers stopped. Every noble leaned forward, terrified yet hungry for the sight they had feared. For centuries, Marcus felt his chest tighten, his hand half raised as if to stop her. But he did not move. He knew this was her choice, her fight, her destiny. And so he stood still, his eyes steady, his voice silent, his heart pounding like drums. Serenia's veil shimmered as she pulled it away. Slowly, carefully, light poured across the chamber, not from the torches, but from her. Her face was revealed, radiant, unearthly, more beautiful than any word could hold. Her violet eyes burned like stars. Her skin glowed faintly as if woven with light. The veil fell to the floor, forgotten, and the chamber trembled with gasps and cries. Some nobles shielded their eyes, convinced death would strike them. Others fell to their knees, unable to bear the weight of her beauty and her power. But Marcus only stared, his breath caught, his voice a whisper. You are not cursed, you are a miracle. Serenia's eyes softened, tears shimmering as she looked at him. For the first time in her life, she was seen, not as prophecy, not as curse, but as herself. The high priest staggered back, his staff shaking. It cannot be. The human lives. The bond did not kill him. The prophecy is true. The council shouted in panic, their voices trembling, their power crumbling in fear. But Serenia raised her hand, her voice like thunder. No more lies, no more cages. I am not your prisoner. I am your ruler. The chamber shook with her words, the walls glowing with ancient light, the carvings burning with the fire of prophecy. Marcus stepped to her side, lifting his blade high, his voice steady. And I stand with her, human and alien, bond and truth. The crowd erupted in chaos, fear and faith clashing in a storm. Some shouted to bow, Others screamed to fight. The nobles tore at one another, their jeweled masks breaking. The prophecy was alive. It walked before them, unshaken and undeniable. The bond between human and princess had not killed, it had lit fire to a new future, and in the heart of the storm stood Serenia, unveiled, radiant, unbroken. She turned to Marcus, her voice low, trembling with emotion. "You should be dead, yet you live. Why?" He answered softly, his eyes locked on hers. "Because I never needed to see your face to believe in you. But now I see it. And I believe even more." Her tears fell, glowing, like liquid stars. For the first time, she reached for his hand, and when their fingers touched, the heart of unity, the ancient power spoken in prophecy, awoke within them. The chamber filled with light, brighter than any torch, brighter than the stars above. The nobles fell silent, their fear drowned in the glow. The prophecy had come true. The bond had been made, and the galaxy itself seemed to shiver at its birth. Serenia stood unveiled, her eyes glowing brighter than fire, her voice strong. The age of fear ends today. And Marcus stood beside her, a human who dared to see what none would, a warrior who turned legend into truth. Together, they faced the storm, knowing this was not the end, but the beginning. The bond of two worlds chamber still glowed with the light of prophecy. The nobles had fallen silent, their jeweled masks trembling in their hands. Some knelt in awe, some cowered in fear, but none could deny what they had seen. The human had stood before the unveiled princess, and he had not died. Instead, the bond had awakened, filling the whole with power that no council could control. Serenia stood unveiled, her violet eyes glowing like living fire. Her beauty was no longer hidden, her strength no longer bound by law or fear. The veil lay on the floor, forgotten silk and jewels, powerless against truth. She held Marcus's hand, and the glow of the heart of unity pulsed through them both. For the first time, she was not alone, and for the first time, she did not tremble. The high priest fell to his knees, his staff clattering against the stone. "It has begun," he whispered, his voice weak. "The prophecy rises. The age of fear ends." But many nobles shouted in anger, their voices sharp. "She is cursed. The human has bewitched her. Destroy them before the bond spreads." The council erupted, torn between centuries of law and the truth burning before their eyes. But Marcus raised his blade, his voice cutting through the storm. "No, this ends now." Serenia's voice joined his, clear and powerful. "We will not bow to fear. Not anymore." The walls shook, the carvings glowed, and the air filled with the hum of ancient power. The heart of unity awakened fully, its light spilling through the chamber like a rising sun. Every name carved into the palace walls shimmered, the voices of the past whispering through the glow. The prophecy was not a curse, it was a promise that human and alien would rise together. The guards lowered their weapons, their eyes wide with awe. The people in the crowd began to kneel, not out of fear, but out of reverence. The bond was undeniable. The power was undeniable. The future had arrived. Serenia looked at Marcus, her unveiled face glowing in the light. "They will come for us. The other houses, the other empires, they will not accept this easily." Marcus nodded, his expression steady. "Then let them come. We will stand together." In that moment, she felt Kel's memory, her brother's sacrifice, and every step that had led her here. And Marcus felt the weight of every soldier he had lost, every friend buried in silence. Together, those losses became strength, binding them in fire stronger than any chain. The nobles who had shouted for blood now lowered their heads, unable to defy the living truth the prophecy had chosen. And the bond of two worlds was sealed. Outside the palace, the news spread like a storm. The people whispered it in the markets. The soldiers shouted it in the streets. The stars themselves seemed to burn brighter. The veiled princess has unveiled. The human has bonded. The age of unity begins. Across the galaxy, empires stirred. Warlords snarled. Prophets wept. And kings trembled. For what had been hidden in shadows for centuries now blazed like fire, unstoppable and eternal. That night, Sir Enyer and Marcus stood on the balcony of the palace, the alien moon high above them. Her unveiled face shone in the silver light, her hair glowing like threads of starlight. Marcus stood beside her, his scars lit by the same glow, his presence steady as stone. The people below gathered in silence, their voices rising as one, not in fear, but in hope. For the first time, they did not see curse or prophecy, they saw a future. Serenier turned to Marcus, her voice soft but strong. I once feared that if anyone ever saw my face, I would be bound forever, trapped in chains I could not escape. Marcus looked at her, his eyes steady. And now? He asked. She smiled faintly, tears glowing in her violet eyes. Now I see that bond is not a prison, it is strength, it is freedom. Because I do not face the stars alone. Marcus tightened his grip on her hand, his voice steady. Neither do I. And together, they looked out over their people, their bond shining like light across the night sky. The veil had cracked, the prophecy had risen, and the worlds had been bound not by fear, but by choice. The story of the veiled princess and the human soldier would be told for generations, not as a tale of curse, but as a legend of courage. For when no one dared to see her face, it was the human who looked without fear. And in that moment, a bond was forged that would outlast empires. A bond of two worlds, a bond of hope, a bond of forever.